Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Bob's Live, our right now every other week show here on the internet. And well, right now you can catch us every other Tuesday at 5 p.m., or at least I shoot for it. um, yeah, I had something come up, of course, right at 5 o'clock when I was getting ready to go live. And as Patty said, she just drove past and saw the green screen. And that gave me a little heart attack because I forgot to check and see that it was actually working prior to starting the live stream. So, hey, at least it's working. And of course, you can always give us a follow at Bob's Market on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. We're going to see a TikTok video here a little bit later, and a whole bunch of other places. So practically any social media you can get on and find Bob's Market there. Um, well, let's get started off today by first taking a little trip out to the greenhouse to see what's happening out there. It's wintertime, and this time of year, we're just starting to get started into the spring season. So things are really starting to ramp up right now. And the greenhouse, it's starting to come alive for spring. So let's check it out. Okay, the last time we were out in this section of the greenhouse, we were looking at a massive sea of ferns. And we grow them here on the heated floor to help them develop stronger roots. And well, now we need this floor space for seedlings. So we're loading up all the ferns onto carts and they're heading out to the greenhouse. And as you can see back here, they're already putting down seedlings where these ferns were at. So let's go check out where the ferns are going. Well, actually, some of them are right there above my head. So the ferns are being moved to basically wherever we have space, which usually is the space in between bays of the greenhouse. And every fern has its own little drip tube that comes down to give it water. So down at the end of the bay, they just turn on a valve and it waters all of these ferns at once. A few weeks ago, I showed you this curtain out in the greenhouse that we use to save on heating. Basically, we can heat that side and leave this side cooler to save energy costs. Well, now we have enough seedlings over here that we need the space on this side. So I literally just cranked up the heat in here. And once this side gets warm enough, we're going to take down this curtain and start hanging up hanging baskets first and then seedlings over into this section. So that's what's happening in the greenhouse right now. We're starting to fill up with seedlings and we're starting to stick cuttings and all of that good stuff heading into springtime. And of course that means right now we're hiring for spring. So if you've driven by our office, right now we have a banner up outside that we're taking applications and starting to hire for the spring season. So if you know of anybody that's looking for a job this spring, send them our way. We need all the help that we can get. As I mentioned, we looked at ferns and seedlings. The other thing that's happening right now is sticking cuttings. So over on our TikTok account, I just uploaded a video about cuttings, and we actually have some of the first blooms of the year down at our greenhouse where we have our cuttings. So, to kind of cheer you up, here is that TikTok video with some of the first blooms of the year. And yeah, if you're on TikTok, go ahead and give us a follow at Bob's Market. We're still pretty new at TikTok. We've been on there for a couple years. We're trying to reach that 1,000 follower mark because once we do that, we can start going live on TikTok. And I would like to do that out in the greenhouse. I think it would be fun just to walk around, answer questions, and that sort of thing out there directly. So, yeah, let's see what's happening down with our cuttings. Hey, today I am down here on a little bit of a rainy day. You might be able to hear it on the roof. But I am down here at our field house location where we grow plants from unrooted cuttings. So these are cuttings from plants that we get in from outside the US, and we stick them in soil, grow roots on them, and then transplant them into finished containers. This early on the season, they're going to be going into hanging baskets because they need a long time to grow. And behind me, we have one of the first batches that we did this year, and we actually have some blooms. So these blooms will be trimmed off, and that encourages branching, but it gives us some color right now in the middle of January. So let's take a look at some of these beautiful blooms. Here we have some beautiful calibrachoas that will be going into 10-inch hanging baskets. And this variety is called Cha Cha Frosty Lemon. They got that beautiful yellow center. And right beside of it, we have Cha Cha Orange and some Cha Cha Yellow. Right next to the yellow, we have one of my favorites. This is Cha Cha Diva Hot Pink. So yeah, that's what's happening with our cuttings right now. And yeah, it's kind of a bummer that those first little blooms of the season, they're going to get chopped off, but we're going to end up with some beautiful baskets. Um, I love that. I think it's Cha Cha Diva Hot Pink. That is just a beautiful mix where it's got the little yellow center and then the pink out on the petals. It just photographs amazingly. Right now, I've got the little logo art for our podcast up on the screen. And that is because this next video segment that I have ties in with our podcast, the Keep Growing podcast. So it is what is currently airing on alternating Tuesdays with this show. So next week, instead of Bob's Live, we're going to have an episode of the Keep Growing podcast. And in our previous episode of the Keep Growing podcast, which I've put a link down in the show notes for this episode, I've put a link to the previous episode of the podcast because we were talking about wild yards and the West Virginia Wild Yards program and kind of creating meadow gardens and how to certify your property as a wildlife habitat. So over this past weekend, I headed out to my own meadow garden to do some winter cleanup. So meadow gardens, it sounds like it's sort of a plan it and forget it sort of thing, which some people do that with a meadow garden. The way I grow mine is I call it lightly managing it. So it does take some yearly cleanup. Otherwise, invasive plants would move in and it would just turn into a big brushy mess. So just like any flower garden, I have to go in and clean it up each year. So I treated the one area that I'm working on in the video, I treat it just like a giant flower bed. So I go in, pick out all the dead plant material, and actually during that process it knocks off a lot of the seeds. But I create a big pile, burn it, and then what I do is I go in and reseed the entire area in the springtime. And that also lets me kind of change up the design a little bit of that one area. So I have areas where I have wildflowers planted, and then I have grassy areas. So the grassy areas I also mow in the fall. And what that does is it promotes thicker grass growth in the springtime. So I end up with just a beautiful ocean of grass out in the grassy areas. But in this video, I'm cleaning up the wildflower area, and you can see in the video, I end up with just a gigantic pile of brush. So let's check out cleaning up the meadow garden. Hi, it is a warmish, sort of mid-30s January day out here, and today what I'm working on is cleaning up my meadow garden. So something that you need to do every year with your meadow is clean it up. So in the fall I mowed off the grassy areas, and what I'm doing today is kind of cleaning up this brush, and then this evening I'm going to have a nice little bonfire. But that'll clear up this area, and then this spring I'm going to come in and reseed the area. Now another option that you could do is also seeding in the fall. So there's a few areas here that I've actually overseeded this fall. So by going in today, that's going to help disperse some seeds, and it's also just going to make the area look a lot nicer going into next springtime. Alright, so I'm making pretty good progress. It took me a little while to kind of figure out which tools worked best, and this garden fork seems to work pretty well. I could kind of swing it and use it like a combination of a little bit of an axe. I'm not really cutting through anything because all of these twigs are so brittle they just break. So I could kind of break things up with this and then shovel them over onto the pile. So I've got probably this older half of the meadow garden done, and now I need to get this other half, which it got overtaken by morning glory vines late in the summer. So it actually looks like it's not going to be too bad. I'm hoping I can start at one end and just kind of push all the vines this way. So that's my kind of strategy for going in and attacking this section. Hopefully it works. We're about ready to find out. I think I will try just a regular lawn rake for this, because it looks like these vines are pretty dried up. Oh yeah, that's working good. Alright, I am just about done here. I'm losing daylight, so once I get everything piled up, I'm going to light this puppy up and have a nice bonfire. Alright, I'm ready to light this pile of brush up. Now, of course, I waited until evening. The dew has fallen. There's a nice coating of frost right now. And I've got an old pitchfork here that I'm going to use to help control the fire. And I've also got water nearby. So we'll stay out here with it until it burns down to embers. And I feel that, you know, it's pretty safe to leave it. What I did do to help get it started is I have some scrap cardboard, and also where I've been remodeling my house, I have some little bits of scrap wood that I added into the pile just to help it get started. So let's go ahead and light it up. Oh, there we go. Alright, now the fire has burnt down to where it's a more manageable height. And what I'm doing right now is I'm just working my way around where the pile was. I'm trying to push anything burnable into the fire to get it to burn. And that way I can create a little bit of a fire break around this just to keep it from spreading. Been wearing my fitness watch today, so yeah, I'm getting a pretty good workout. So yeah, that was cleaning up my meadow garden, and it went pretty well. I got one heck of a workout out of it. My next step is to fire up the riding lawnmower, go in, kind of chop up what's left and mulch it, and then I can go in and start to reseed over the area, figure out where I want to put seeding, add any paths, and different things like that. So after I mow over the area, something I'm probably going to do is take my drone, fly it up, get good aerial photos of our property. I actually did that last year for garden planning, and it worked out great because I can print off the photos and then draw directly on them my plans. So that's a fun tip. Another way you can do it, if you don't have access to a drone and you have a larger section of property like I have, jump on Google Earth or Google Maps and print off a screenshot of Google Earth. And it is just a great tool for being able to plan out your landscape. When I first started the meadow garden, it was basically a big rectangle, and through using drone photography and just previous years' experience and adding on to it, I've made the whole thing more organic in its shape. Of course, I'm still limited by, the neighboring property and its right angles. Um, but the areas facing the house, at least, look more organic. So I'm constantly thinking when I'm designing my landscape is how does it look from my house, mainly because I'm the one that's going to be getting the most enjoyment out of it, but also how does it look if you're driving by on the highway or driving down the street next to my house. Um, so yeah, that's the next steps with the meadow garden heading into this springtime. There's not a whole lot to do right now out in the garden. Here pretty soon, it's going to be time to starting seeds indoors, and before we can do that, we need to start planting. So, um, oh, okay. So yeah, I'm looking ahead at my future plans here, um, which I just finished that today as my plan for the next 3 months. Um, but yeah, up next, we're going to talk about some houseplant care in our next episode of Bob's Live. And then we're going to start getting into some of that pre planning, purchasing seeds, what to grow from seeds, what to grow from starts. That's always a fun debate. And yeah, we're going to go from there with getting into springtime gardening. So hopefully between Bob's Live and the podcast, I'm hoping to equip you going into this springtime to really kind of see how I plan stuff out and usually try to come up with a plan that I can execute. Of course, you always come up with a huge to-do list for spring and summer, and then you get to maybe half of it. At least that's my experience. So yeah. Again, this coming Tuesday, we're going to have an episode of Bob's Live, or not Bob's Live, but the Keep Growing podcast. So there won't be an episode of Bob's Live, and we'll be joining you again live here week after next. So until next time, keep growing. Oh, hey, Carol says she just got her amaryllis from Belpre. Yeah, I know John had a few of them left, and I'm glad you were able to snag one. And I'm glad I saw that comment right before I ended the live stream. So, yep, until next time, keep growing. Have a great couple weeks.